And that was one of the things that pushed me, because I wanted to represent people whether they could afford it or not. And that got my reputation out there pretty fast. And following through on things, when I tell somebody I'd do something, I'd do it that minute, never ever hesitate. And it got to where I did a lot of criminal defense as well. And that was the last thing that I let go of, because I didn't want to let go of it. I loved it. The thought of getting somebody a second chance when they've screwed up really appealed to me. Mm-hmm. And it was very kind of a God thing. I hated bullies. I was bullied as a little kid. I was a fat little kid, and I had a real issue with bullies. Mm. And I saw the state and insurance companies as bullies. And it wasn't like I was trying to convince myself, going there, and I believed it.
Yeah.
And I would fight anybody. Wow. And if you got within 5 feet of my desk, you'd get served. I mean, I was not afraid to go to trial. So that really, there's two kinds of lawyers, man. There's settle lawyers and fight lawyers. Yeah. Most of them want to settle because it scares them. Yeah. And it is terrifying.
Yeah.
It is a terrifying experience to go in front of a jury with a client whose life is hanging in the balance.
Yeah.
And that can be with personal injury or criminal defense.
Or family even.
Yeah. But my big moment in personal injury came when one of the reps for phone book, that was phone books at the time, he wanted me to have the inside back cover. And I said, Johnny, nobody looks at the inside back cover. That's ridiculous. He's like, okay, whatever. He put my ad in there anyway. Just threw it in there.
Wow.
And a woman who'd been hit by a semi came in and opened her phone book upside down, and there was my ad that looked like it was the first page. Mm. So she called me, and it was the insurance carrier had offered her $100,000, paralyzed from the waist down.
Oh my gosh.
She was this close to taking it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And I'm like, you don't understand. I know you work at Walmart, and $8 an hour $100,000 sounds like a fortune to you, but it's not going to get you anywhere with getting your home ready for your wheelchair. You got to get a special shower. You got to widen the doors. You've got hail damage all over the side of it, I noticed. You need help. And $100,000 is going to last you about 6 months.
Yeah.
So we settled her case for $5.7 million. And to this day, she's getting along fine.
Great.
But if she'd taken that $100,000, she'd be homeless or living hand to mouth.
Yeah.
So that was one of the moments where I just really loved personal injury, and I kind of got through the other stuff, and I quit doing real estate and business and even criminal and family. I put all that stuff aside and started just doing personal injury, and I did really well, and I loved it. And in the late 2000s, I had a motorcycle wreck that I crushed my right ankle, and then broke both bones in my left arm. And then later on, I had a ladder collapse, and I broke all the ribs on my right side, severe separation in my shoulder. And then I had a car wreck where I flipped my Benz end over end and broke my back at T6.
How far apart were those?
Well, the motorcycle wreck was in undergrad at Texas A&M, and then the car wreck was in 2003, and then the ladder collapse was in about 2014.
Wow.
But the doctor for my ankle that was shattered, he said, you could wake up without a foot, man. I got to tell you, it's bad.
Oh, wow.
So he put a bunch of screws in it, and it worked. It healed. Wow. And but he said, in 20 years, you're going to have a fusion. Mm. And I'm like, 20 years? You can't. To the day. Oh. I freaking 20 years, and my ankle it didn't give out, but it was like, oh, this hurts.
Oh, wow.
And so I tried to not deal with it, and then I ended up going to a specialist, an ankle guy, and he said, you need a fusion. And so ankle fusion, where they basically bolt your ankle to your foot so it has no range of motion. But it prevents the bones from rubbing together, which was what was happening and causing all that pain.
Wow.
So he did the fusion, and it didn't work. It's called a non-union. And so now in 2010 or 12, I'm really hurting, and I'm taking pain medication.
Oh.
And it starts to get to where I've got a codependency thing. I'm getting hooked on it. Well, then the ladder collapsed. I got off of it and I stopped, and then the ladder collapsed and broke all the ribs on my right side. You can't understand the pain when you break that many ribs. It's a whole different dimension of pain. Like consciousness is a real curse at that moment when they were broken that bad. So the ambulance took me to the hospital, gave me morphine, and then I'm sitting at home, and the morphine wears off.
Yeah.
Andrea had gone to the store, but I was sitting there with my cell phone in bed, and the morphine wore off, and I'm telling you, I was hurting so bad. So I called 911. They came in. I remember the big fireman's boots on my bed. I'm thinking, really, dude? But I'm also very happy to see him. So, but just touching the bed was like unbelievable pain.
Wow.
So that got me back into pain pills, and now it got really bad, and it got to where I was dependent on it and really not seeing any reason to stop. And I'm in an enormous amount of pain, and I'm justifying it, and my doctor's prescribing it as fast as I ask for it. One of the problems with personal injury is the doctors want to take care of you and make you happy, so you send them cases. And then when the case settles, you pay them. And it's called a letter of protection. And so I've got all the medication I could possibly take from this guy. And I really wish he hadn't done that. But it's certainly not his fault. I'm the one who was asking for it. But it caused me to get further into the addiction so much that it compromised my judgment. And the doctor said my judgment and my insight, which I don't even know what that means, how your insight can be compromised. But if you think about it, it makes sense. Like, why would you not do this? Well, I know better than to do this because that's not what you do. So after winning the law firm of the year 8 times in 25 years, I start getting grievances from the state bar, and it just gets uglier and uglier. And so finally I resigned and made a deal with the bar. They were happy that the fight was going to be over. And I wrote them a letter and told them what had really happened. And their animosity was just vanished. They quit being so impossible and so harsh and so, like, I don't think they really wanted to hurt me. But I still had to resign. And the deal was, I'll resign if I can keep these cases. And she was like, okay, send me a list of the cases you're talking about. So when anybody complains, we will have that list. And that's what saved me, because if she hadn't done that and I had lost, I would have run out of money. And so that allowed me to get back on my feet after not having a law license. And it really did. It was like, the whole time I'm a Christian, I've been a Christian all this time, and it just looks so horrible. This looks bad. And you don't want to believe that this is happening. But at the end of the day, you look and you're like, God, I don't know what you're allowing this to happen. And I cussed him out and yelled and screamed, and how could you let this happen? I can't even believe this is happening. But at the end of the day, it wasn't, it almost at this point feels like that was what was supposed to happen for several reasons. And hopefully this podcast is one of them, that you and I would have never met had that not happened. And I think God has a twisted sense of humor. Give him that. But I got into the stock market at some level, and I've gotten into some other just entrepreneurial endeavors that have allowed me to survive. But we're at the end of this bumpy road.
Wow.
But that's kind of my story, and
Wow.
that's kind of why I'm able to sit here with you and talk about things we're talking about.
Wow.